Morning, Paul. Congratulations on the publication of AFME's report into insolvency reform. I'd like to ask you some basic questions today.
Thank you, David. Good morning.
I noticed there are some very bold claims about the impact on the real economy, a contribution of up to 80 billion euros in terms of extra economic activity. Could you explain, if you like, the key findings and how we got to them?
Certainly, David. Thank you. So we undertook for the first time an economic study on the impact of insolvency reform, because a lot of work has been done, but so far there haven't been hard-edged economic estimates of the impact that insolvency reform could have. So we worked with Frontier Economics and with a law firm, Weil Gotshal, to produce that estimate. And what we found and how we derived our result was looking at corporate bond spreads across Europe and looking at the impact that a country's insolvency regime has on their cost of borrowing. So that's how we get to the result.
Right, and I mean, what did we find in terms of the status quo at the moment? It's a highly fragmented series of different insolvency regimes, presumably.
Yes, that's right. There are some common themes emerging, and in 2014 the European Commission published a recommendation, not a firm legal measure, but a set of guidelines around an ideal insolvency regime, and we see European member states moving towards that model. For example, in the past 3 years, 11 of the 28 EU member states have reformed their insolvency regime. 7 countries in the past year have undertaken reform. So there's a trend, but we think that that trend needs a bit more focus and direction. So that's why we're really pleased that the European Commission is going to launch a legislative proposal later this year.
So, Paul, what are the granular benefits to the system from insolvency reform?
There are 2 sets of benefits. First, if a company is viable, it helps it to bounce back and restructure more quickly. Secondly, if a company is non-viable, if it is insolvent, a good insolvency regime will help that company to be wound down more quickly, return more value to creditors more quickly.
And Paul, what very specific recommendations are we making in this report?
We've made 2 broad sets of recommendations. We have a package that we want to see written into an EU directive, and we have a set of other longer term options where we want to see EU guidelines. In terms of an EU directive, we want to see a firm stay procedure so that a company has protection from its creditors in order to restructure. We want to see super priority protection for new financing, which provides working capital to the company. We want to see a provision called cram down, which means that if creditors no longer have value in a company, they can't hold up a restructuring. And finally, in terms of an EU directive, we also want to see much better reporting by the public sector and by authorities across Europe, because we feel, and I think the Commission recognises this, that the data on insolvency outcomes simply isn't good enough yet across Europe.
Thank you. And what are the obstacles in the way to achieving what, as you acknowledge, a very ambitious set of proposals?
Well, I think the first is an understanding of the position across the member states, and our report helps to provide that. So the work that Weil Gotshal has done helps to provide a snapshot of the insolvency framework in France, in Germany, Spain, Italy, and other countries. So that's just a basic benchmarking exercise. There has to be a discussion about priorities in the European Council and in the European Parliament. As I said, there is movement across the EU member states already. So I think the challenge is for the Commission and for the member states to accept and recognise that and harness that momentum and build a consensus around a proposal.
And so, Paul, where do we go from here?
The Commission has said that by the end of this year they want to put forward a legislative proposal, and that work will be led jointly by the European Financial Markets Commissioner Jonathan Hill and by the Justice Commissioner Vera Jourova. In the lead up to that, we expect that the Commission will consult on the content of its legislative proposal, and we hope that the report that we put forward will help to inform the debate.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, David.